Welcome to the Steroids Podcast with your host, Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Boom! Boom! Let's get started here. The Steroids Podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Guide to Roids, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Now, for the first time in bodybuilding history, you have someone with no corporate interests and no obligation to please anyone, not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the information, the whole truth, not a full truth and a half truth, full truth. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the keys to the Lamborghini, gives you the information, and lets you decide what to do with it. It's a crime this information has been suppressed this long. Now,
all right, what's up, dude? You want to talk steroids? All right, you came to the right podcast. You know, it's kind of a fun topic to talk about. I'd say most people, that do gear or don't, they're pretty interested in learning about steroids. So it's a pretty interesting podcast. Tell your friends about it. This one is general questions. It was pretty fun having D-Tren on the podcast the other day. There was good feedback on that. It seems like you guys liked that. So this one's just going to be the standard format, general questions podcast. I'll just somebody wanted me to talk about phentermine. Okay. So phentermine is an amphetamine diet drug. Okay. And what it does is the amphetamine effects are very focused in the body, not the mind. So like low euphoria, as an amphetamine, or low mental stimulation, but a lot of body stimulation. So things like, affecting your heartbeat a lot, or, affecting, shaking hands, like your hand is trembling, something like that. Feeling anxious, anxiety. That's what I mean by, like caffeine overdose type symptoms. That's what phentermine specializes in, and that's how it would be different from an amphetamine such as Adderall, for example, which is mostly focused in your brain. So phentermine is different in that way. It's an effective diet drug. Like if somebody was interested in like pure weight loss, and they went to a weight loss clinic, an aggressive weight loss clinic, could prescribe a combination of like T3 thyroid hormone and phentermine to that person. I really wouldn't, if you really want to lose weight, I really don't think that stimulants work that good. What I think is the best method is that you need to get off of any kind of mental medications. So, these things cause weight gain and they impair glucose metabolism. So things like SSRI antidepressants, antipsychotics like Lamictal. There's any kind of these medications that mess, antipsychotics or serotonin system medications. They interact with your glucose metabolism. It's a very complex series of events, but there's this thing called the melanocortin system downstream, and basically serotonin system runs through the melanocortin system, which controls like feeding behavior. And a lot of people that are on SSRIs, for example, like Zoloft or something like that, will have a hyperpalatability for sugars and carbohydrates and really feel a non-stop bottomless hunger for carbohydrates. And part of this is because of the what's happening with their melanocortin system through the SSRI use, and basically their brain not having a working sensor for I'm full. Normally a person, when they get full or they become a little bit nauseated or something, but this person's sensor mechanism for getting full and then being like, oh, shut off the hunger switch, can be very impaired in people that are taking medications for their brain. So that's what I'm going to say first, okay? And then the next one would be that you need to do things like you need to do what your grandma would have taught you to do. You need to eat your vegetables with every meal, and you need to eat your fiber, and you need to eat your healthy food, and you need to, not eat snacks and things throughout the day. Like, I'm telling you, like, these wisdom things that, like grandma would have told you, these actually apply to bodybuilding. And, it might seem a little bit funny that I'm talking about this thing on here because it's like bodybuilders listening or whatever, but it's actually very common. At least 50% of people, are not, they've, I think it's because of the internet. There's so many ideas on the internet that people are not following the basics because the internet has taught them that there's all these tricks and things to get around following the basics so that they can have their cake and eat it too. And they can have, eating their junk food, but having a nice body or something. Dude, you got to let go, like, all that pride about, like, all that stuff that was, like, learned on the internet because, following the standard way of doing things really freaking works. So here's the other thing is that there's a supplement called Melanotan 2, okay? Melanotan 2 is, it other than tanning your skin, it does two things. It makes you extremely nauseated for about 5 days after taking a shot, and it makes you, like, not want to eat food. So if you, like, think of food, you will not want that, and you may have, like, kind of like a vomit sensation. This is Melanotan 2. And then the other thing is that it gives you an erection that sticks around for like 4 hours. Rich Piana talked about this on his channel too. And it's like a no reason boner. So it's not like you could just be walking around and it would just be there. And this happens if you look at the studies on the erectile effects of Melanotan 2. Having they measured it like with a device, giving people Melanotan injections, and then with a device that went over their penis, measuring it as like how much erectile activity there was, right? And when you look at these studies, it's so much more powerful than Viagra, and I would 100% agree with that. In that, like, it says that like the rigidity was like 98%, and like the mean erection time with no sexual stimulation was like 45 minutes or more. So that's a thing, like, with like Viagra, for example, it doesn't work unless you're like in a sexual situation, but Melanotan, you don't have to be thinking about sex or be in a sexual situation. You just take the shot and then your dick just gets an erection and it won't go down. So little known fact right there, people aren't talking about that. And then the other thing is that, what I was talking about, the anti-eating effects, the nausea effects, and making you not want food of Melanotan are basically unmatched. It is so powerful. So you will not be eating. You will not want to eat under any circumstances, except for the smallest bits of stuff just here and there if you are taking Melanotan. Interesting. All right. Okay. The first question is from Murda, who asks, hey, have you ever run Superdrol and Winstrol together? And yeah, I have run Superdrol and Winstrol together. I always run Superdrol and Winstrol together. Stacking orals really works as far as like bodybuilding. So, people, what they think is normal or what they think is like the way to do steroids is just whatever they've seen on the internet, because that's all they've been exposed to. So they don't know what they haven't been exposed to. Of course not. Like, how could you know what it's like to be living in Thailand in Thai culture if you've never been exposed and been living in Thai culture? You can't. So yeah, I like Winstrol and Superdrol together.
I like to take 30 to 50 milligrams of Superdrol per day. Those are really the dosages. You know, you need 30 milligrams in order to get Superdrol doing what it's doing. But 30 to 50 milligrams per day, you know, doing that, you are going to notice effects that are going to make you think, damn, this is what I thought steroids were going to be like. You know, and then I was disappointed when I started taking them and I didn't turn into Ronnie Coleman overnight. But you know, Superdrol kind of does, you know, not overnight, but in a matter of weeks. So it's pretty incredible. And you know, it's funny, like some of these things that I talk about, like some supplements I talk about, they can take a while to catch on. You know, I know people have known and believed that Superdrol was strong from me talking about it, but I'm telling you, dude, you definitely could not say that Trenbolone is stronger than Superdrol. Like you could say they're the same, but you couldn't say like, yeah, Trenbolone can change your body more profoundly in a shorter amount of time than Superdrol. Actually, the opposite is true. 100% without a doubt. Superdrol can change what your body looks like drastically in a shorter period of time than Trenbolone can. It's very powerful. I like stacking orals, okay? That was why I was talking about the thing about, you know, oh, you haven't been exposed. You don't know what you haven't been exposed to. And I said that thing about like Thailand, Thai culture, whatever. You know, so if you've never been exposed to the idea of stacking orals, then you're going to, you know, when I tell you something like, oh, you know, stacking orals really works. And, you know, people do this. You're going to be like, what? Like this is some crazy new stuff. And I don't agree with it. But the whole bodybuilding industry, this is the whole premise that you have to start with, is the entire thing is a lie by steroid users to trick non-steroid users or beginners to steroids, because they know that those non-steroid users or beginner steroid users don't like them, the steroid abusers who are the big bodybuilders and, you know, the people who you want to look like. And then so they scam you, because you don't like them and they don't like you either. And so they scam you and they tell you, you know, all this stuff that is the opposite of what is the truth, is the opposite of what is real. It's fake. So with, you're going to notice, you know, if you, the more extreme a person goes with the steroids, this is a theme in the Steroids podcast. Okay. Because it's just reality. And okay, so the more extreme you go with the steroids, the more extreme science experiment looking the bodybuilder becomes. Okay, that's not rocket science, you know, and just denying things that are true and being like, I don't agree with that. It's like, yeah, is that unhealthy? Hell yeah, it's unhealthy. Have I, you know, done some really, you know, I've done some steroid abuse that I think, you know, I definitely know that's not healthy and I don't recommend it, and I'm not doing it now. You know, the steroid use that I'm doing now is definitely not as extreme as the steroid use that I was doing when I was, you know, trying to get to my biggest or something like that. You know, I think over time, you know, people who have taken steroids for a long time, they start being like, oh man, I recognize how huge a part of steroids is to bodybuilding. And, you know, I don't want to just be like taking all these medicine, you know, taking all these hormone drugs, you know, all the time and shit. You know, I don't want to do that. So there, you know, I was talking about this with D-Tron the other day too, is, you know, every bodybuilder at some point goes like, am I a walking pharmacy or something? Or like, I feel like a walking pharmacy or something. So, dude, bodybuilding, you know, it's not healthy. Most sports aren't healthy. All right. Like, you get hurt. What freaking professional sports player hasn't, you know, like had all these surgeries and stuff, you know, always getting their body cut into, you know, and you know, maybe there's more risk to like the internal organ part and less the surgery with steroids. But if you're going to be like serious about sports, like really serious, then you are kind of, depending on how serious you are kind of sacrificing your body's longevity. So Make no illusion. I know a lot of people that give steroid content try to like talk about like my TRT or something. So in the first place, they're lying to you. They're not on TRT. And then they will kind of say like, oh, you know, my bodybuilding is healthy or my steroids are healthy or something. Like that is not true. Okay. So rather than just tell you something that isn't real, something that's fake and something that's not true, why not just tell you that the steroids aren't healthy and neither is being serious about sports. It's not healthy. And life isn't always about, you know, trying to stay away from every risk. Like, do you want to go ski down a mountain? Well, you know, you could die, okay? But it's pretty fun and you're probably not going to. So you're going to do it. So you can't just like try to avoid risks. You have to calculate what risks you want to take, which is another good reason why if you're going to take steroids, and I talk about this in Ultimate Guide to Roids, you cannot be putting regular gasoline in a Ferrari. It's going to clog the engine. Once you supercharge the vehicle, which is your body, with the steroids, you cannot be doing this like if it fits your macros, you know, eating a lot of garbage all the time and thinking you're going to be healthy in any shape or form. That kind of unhealthy food is damaging your body more than it's damaging the natural person's body. Okay. So, you know, this is reality. There's a lot of bodybuilders in big denial. They don't want you to think they're drug addicts and they want you to think what they're doing is healthy. And so they say things that aren't true. Okay. Bodybuilding is not healthy. Bottom line. Neither is being a serious sportsman. You can't stay away from all risks in life. You have to pick which ones you want to expose yourself to. So that's it with, you know, we're talking about stacking orals, okay? You were saying Superdrol and Winstrol. People aren't familiar with stacking orals. People know that Superdrol is powerful and toxic. Have I stacked Superdrol and Winstrol? Yeah, pretty much every time I've ever used Superdrol. And what else was I running with it? Pretty much Anadrol every single time. Yeah. All right. Next question from Alex. Hey, man, I've been listening to your podcast with the Russian powerlifter Vadim talking about methylene blue and its use benefits. I think he mentioned taking it for 3 weeks straight, then taking a break. However, he did not say how many milligrams he takes per day for general well-being and disease or sickness prevention. Can you tell me that, please? Thanks. Yeah. So in depression, treatment-resistant depression, so like somebody who is on SSRIs but they're not responding to the treatment, if you add 15 milligrams of methylene blue per day, it makes a profound change in their response to the SSRI antidepressant treatment for that person who is having an extreme depression. And so that's according to research on methylene blue. For sicknesses like malaria, etc., it can be used at much higher dosages, you know, dosages between like 30 milligrams per day up to, you know, very high, you know, hundreds, depending on what's going on. It's also, you know, it makes your blood be able to carry more oxygen. That's one of the components of methylene blue too. So for certain diseases that have caused low blood oxygen, it can be used for that at various dosages, usually high dosages in that case. But for general well-being, you know, I think that 30 milligrams is a good dosage. You know, be careful too. If you are on an SSRI and you're taking methylene blue, you can very easily get serotonin syndrome. So when, you should look at that study and you should decide what you want to do. You know, you should look at that study combining, you know, 15 milligrams of methylene blue, but so the serotonin syndrome, which is noticed by very high blood pressure and rapid irregular heartbeat, flushing, that's a very real possibility for you if you are on an SSRI. So generally combining SSRIs and methylene blue is dangerous. Methylene blue is a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, so it makes it so that the enzymes that break down your neurotransmitters are they're not there anymore. Okay. So, you know, what exemestane does to your aromatase enzyme gets rid of it. So methylene blue does that to the enzymes that get rid of your neurotransmitters. And that's why it makes you feel more happy, is because you have less enzymes metabolizing your serotonin, your dopamine, your adrenaline, etc. So you feel less depressed. All of a sudden, your neurotransmitter levels are up, and it's very effective. Okay, methylene. I'll tell you the dosage that I like to take of methylene blue. I like to take about 30 milligrams a day, because it comes usually 10 milligrams per milliliter, and 30 milligrams a day. I just like taking it. I just like taking it, and it makes me feel better. It definitely puts me in a better mood. It makes my pee green or blue. And, it definitely has antiviral, antiparasitic qualities. If you've got something like a urinary tract infection, methylene blue can definitely help you. So it comes out in your urine concentrated. And, if you have a urinary tract infection and, you'll feel it like burning in your dick after you pee for like maybe 10 or 15 minutes because that methylene blue is going to be, destroying and killing all of the bacteria that is, causing that little thing or something to happen there. So, some of these kind of stuff happens sometimes, or sometimes, people can say, or think they have a swollen prostate, but it's really because they have some urinary tract inflammation. And so in that case, if you're having trouble peeing, etc., a run of methylene blue, seeing if it, it clears out any kind of bacteria, parasitic in the urinary tract causing that inflammation, it can definitely help. Seen it help people, has helped myself at times. So yeah, that's what I recommend. That's me. That's my take on methylene blue for you today. And next question is from Zach. Is losartan a good blood pressure med to use in case it would start going up? I just came across some, wondering if it would be useful. Yeah, it is. So losartan is a angiotensin type 2 receptor antagonist. These kind of drugs, like, they're generally called like ARBs. So like angiotensin receptor blocker. Okay. And what these do is they make it so that the angiotensin system, which is normally controlling the constriction or the relaxation of the veins throughout your body, is kind of blocked. And so that you have more relaxed veins, because normally the angiotensin system is coming in and saying, contract the veins, make them hard, which increases your blood pressure, obviously. So sartan meds work very well. Losartan, telmisartan. I take telmisartan, 80 milligrams once per day. So that would be like a number one blood pressure remedy. And one of the great things too about angiotensin receptor blockers is you're just blocking the receptor, so there isn't a rebound when you come off. When you come off, it's not like you get sky high blood pressure for a while you're waiting for some, like resensitization or something. You just removed the blocking from the receptor, so now the system can, the angiotensin system can function again, the angiotensin system. So you don't get any rebound, if you go off of it for some reason. So that's a very good thing about angiotensin receptor blockers, sartan medications, and like, so I had high blood pressure. I've said this a bunch of times, but I had high blood pressure from steroids, long time. Usually systolic blood pressure, around like 150, diastolic around 80 or so. And, I've been taking telmisartan for about 2 years now. It's been life-changing for me. Solved a lot of problems. I didn't know that my high blood pressure was causing, some of the side effects that I was getting until after, I started taking that. So really made things better for me. So your kidney health, which is something that you really want to watch out for with steroids, is mainly dependent on your blood pressure. So there's a couple things that are really going to, your heart and your kidneys. The two things that are going to make them function well is maintaining the proper hematocrit so that your blood does not get too thick. The tubules in the kidneys are very, very small, and they filter the blood. And if the blood pressure is too high, they burst, and it's very, very hard for them to repair. And if the blood is too thick, it can't flow through the tiny tubules properly that filter the blood, and can also cause, a decrease in kidney function. So exploding the tubules, obviously, decrease in kidney function from high blood pressure. So high blood pressure, high hematocrit, both hurting your kidneys, both, needless to say, hurting your heart as well. So I don't let these things be a factor anymore, but they were a factor in my steroid using life, which is a regret that I have. It's a regret that I have, allowing my hematocrit to be too high, not donating blood, not being soldier-like and regimented-like in my blood donation schedule to keep my hematocrit within the normal range. That is something I regret. The other thing that I regret is not taking blood pressure medication soon enough and causing that problem. Now, I just got my blood work that I took recently. I think I might not have said anything on the podcast, but I did on my Instagram at Bodybuilder in Thailand, that I took a month off, of gear, and then I did a cruise for a couple of weeks, and now I've been taking some gear again, and so I got a blood work, done at the end of that, because my hematocrit had got so high because I had chosen not to donate any, or not to do any phlebotomy, during the COVID thing. I didn't want to go to the hospital. I didn't want to be associated with, the fiasco that's going on down there. So, I didn't do that for a year, and my hematocrit went way too high. It went about 57, 58, the cutoff is about 50, 51. And, started noticing some water retention from that, because it was, hard for my kidneys to then filter the blood. The kidneys control water retention. So anyways, how I solved that, just to let you guys know, is I, over the course of about 3 weeks, I phlebotomized, or got rid of 1.5 liters of blood. So 1,500 milliliters of blood I released from my body and threw in the garbage. And that brought my hematocrit level down to a 48, which is, the top of the normal range. And then I, after a couple weeks of that, went and got my kidney tested, and my EGFR, which is how you measure the kidney function. The function of your kidneys was 111. So over 60 is considered good kidney function. But my kidney function is that of basically 2 men. It's so good now. It makes me wonder, are the steroids making my kidneys function extra good now that I've got my hematocrit and, my blood pressure perfect right now? Because why are my 2 kidneys processing blood and cleaning it at the rate of 4 kidneys? That is some serious EGFR score right there. So I was pleased with that. At the beginning of the podcast, I said, hey, bro, you want to talk steroids? Well, you came to the right place. And I mean, that's exactly how this is right now. I'm just talking steroids with you. See, I'm not trying to protect myself or make you think that, I don't make mistakes, with my own use from time to time, or have to do some troubleshooting, or there's nothing I regret or something. I'm talking to you I'm talking to you like your gym buddy, or like your lifting partner or something, who wants to see you do good. So that's why I'm being so honest with you. I figure there's going to be some of you guys who are going to run into these situations, or who may be in these situations already. You're going to hear the podcast, and it's going to freaking save you your health. It might save you your kidneys. So yeah, I'm happy to put myself out there and tell you exactly, what it's like, things, I go through or whatever, taking steroids. All right, next question. Benjamin asks, how long do you usually have to run Nolva and Letro to shrink a marble-sized gyno down? Can't see it because I'm probably above 15% body fat, but I'm just annoyed. Not on any tests or PEDs at the moment. Never had a problem with gyno. Yeah, your message started getting a little bit contorted or something there. That was weird. But the bottom line is that your body fat is too high right now to be worrying about your gyno. If you are if you are like higher than 12 or 13% body fat, you will have fat around your nipples and the edge of your chest, and it will kind of sag down at times and make it kind of look like, I mean, not always, okay, but it can give a look like, you know, if the nipple is soft or something like that. You know, there can be a look where you be like, oh, I have gyno, like, you know, what the heck, my nipple's kind of like hanging off my pec muscle a little bit. But you know what, that can be corrected from, you know, negative calorie dieting, okay, very much. So the only part of the gyno that will not like go away through dieting when you have something like that is like a very hard, like bumpy, rough kind of textured thing inside that is like a rock, okay? Any other texture or any other tissue that is on the edge of your pec around your nipple, and you might think like, oh, I have gyno, that will go away from dieting, okay? So the nipple is in very estrogenic, progestogenic spot. I think you know that. You know, it's not developed in men, but it's like a vestigial organ for breasts in women. So the gland is there, and it has the like potential, you know, you're the wrong chromosomes, you know, and you have the wrong hormones. But, you know, at some point, you know, before the sex of the baby was decided, you know, you had the potential there to like have a breast. And so that some of that machinery is there, including like androgen receptor or estrogen receptors being concentrated in that area. So you're going to gain fat around your nipple, like breast area, more so than other areas. Not everybody, but most people do. There are some people that really do not have fat on their chest. You know, if you see a dude like this, you must, you know, what goes through my mind is like, so I guess his sister is just totally flat. But, so most dudes are going to have some fat around their chest, and they're going to notice it's going to be like, you know, concentrated on the nipple area. So before you worry about like getting rid of your gyno, diet the fat off your nipple area so you don't have that like kind of like flap kind of like hanging away from the muscle. And when I say flap, I'm very much, you know, covering a long range of how things can look, exaggerating, etc. Diet that off. Get down to 12% body fat, 13% body fat. You know, as far as the letro and the nolvadex, you know, using high dose nolvadex works really good because it starves the estrogen receptors and kind of causes cell tissue death in that area. So, you know, 40 to 60 milligrams of nolvadex per day for, you know, a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. You know, letrozole, you know, a few times a week, and, you know, maybe a little bit of cabergoline too, because needing to kind of melt some of that more hard granular tissue, which that works well with. And, you know, you should get results within like 7 to 14 days. You know, it's, if you haven't got the results and you're, you know, after 7 to 14 days, you need to ask yourself, like, am I being aggressive enough trying to get rid of this? And then, you know, if the answer to that is yes, you're being very aggressive with, you know, not being like, but I'm worried about crashing my estrogen, because obviously if you're worried about that at all, you're not going to be successful at shrinking your gyno. So if that's not the case though, then, you know, at that point you may need to get surgery to remove your gyno. All right. So the next question is from Brett. Listen to your podcast, episode 46. What's the most underrated PED? So I added 1,000 milligrams of metformin to start, and literally in days, I see my body changing when I wake up. I'm 50 and haven't seen changes like this in years. I'm on Sizin 6 IU, split into 3 IU each shots. Just wanted to thank you for that amazing info, as I never would have added metformin. And when would you increase to 2,000 milligrams of metformin? I would, as soon as you weren't having gastrointestinal side effects. So the thing with metformin is that with almost everyone, when you start taking it, you get like diarrhea and like a lot of like gas and bloating, and it's really uncomfortable. And that lasts for 10 to 14 days. And if you take a lower dose when you start, like 500 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams to start, this is less severe than if you like started at 2,000 milligrams. But really, like, so like the fat burning effects of metformin are pretty good, around 1,000 milligrams or so a week or a day. But as far as like muscle fullness and looking freaky and looking like you're on insulin and growth hormone, like looking like, what the heck, I'm at maximum pump when I'm not even at the gym, but my muscles look the same way that they do when I'm just walking around as they do when I have a maximum pump at the gym, even though I don't have a pump right now. That look, that's a 2,000 milligrams. That the threshold between 1,000 to 2,000 is what causes the muscles to really get that bigger added size, more round thing going on to them. With metformin. So my advice would be to get to 2,000 milligrams as soon as you feel that you can tolerate it, with gastrointestinal side effects. And so the thing is, with metformin too, it really needs a synergy with growth hormone. Taking metformin alone without growth hormone, just taking metformin and steroids together, is not the same experience as taking steroids, growth hormone, and metformin. Just like taking growth hormone alone, without steroids totally sucks and does nothing for your performance. You have to have the steroids and the growth hormone for the metformin to work right, okay? So, and to really give the amazing effects. So, putting that out there. All right, B asks, what's up, Dan? I've been listening to your podcast, and it's awesome. Also very helpful. I'm not done with it yet, but wanted to ask if I need to take any estrogen blocker every day, even though I'm not seeing or noticing any symptoms, just to be on the safe side. I'm injecting a milliliter of Test 300 and a milliliter of Tren 200 every Tuesday and Saturday. So 600 Test, 400 Tren a week. This is my second cycle. I'm learning as I go. Would appreciate your help. Thank you. Don't take the estrogen blocker every day. So, you said that you're not seeing or noticing any symptoms, but should you just take it anyway to be on the safe side? So if you are taking estrogen blocker when you don't need to, and you're making your estrogen be lower than the normal range, so when you're using steroids, your estrogen should always be the same as if you weren't taking steroids. If you were natural, you want your estrogen to be in that same level as if you were natural when you're taking steroids, to feel the best, to function the best, to perform the best, to have the best sex drive and function, as majorly. That's a major issue too. Majorly negative side effect, if you take too much, AI will be, very low brain energy, and killed sex drive. But if for some, reason you avoided that, there's also another, reason not to have zero estrogen and take too much either. And that is the cardiovascular protective effects of estrogen. Women generally have less heart attacks, strokes, etc. than men, or have them later in life. That's really what it is, later in life, because women lose their estrogen, okay? So when women hit menopause, they lose their estrogen, and that's when they start having, cardiovascular disease. Before that, they don't really have it, but men do have it sometimes, like earlier in life and stuff. So estrogen has a protective effect on your heart. It has a protective effect on your veins, your arteries. It makes them more healthy, more pliable. You don't want to live a life with zero estrogen. You're going to hurt your heart. Yeah. Reason not to have zero estrogen. It's not a hormone you hate. You just like a drop of it. David asks, hey, Dan, love your content and have seen all the podcasts about metformin. As you said, there's a lot of shit on the internet regarding metformin. However, I was concerned about the possibility of lactic acidosis from metformin. I was hoping you could shine some light on it. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Great question. So there are a few medicines in bodybuilding that cause like lactic acid. Well, I don't want to say lactic acid. That cause acid reflux, that cause acidity, okay? Acid reflux is a symptom of overall body acidity. But there are definitely, it's when you feel burning in your throat. And so there are definitely bodybuilding chemicals that increase this. One would be Trenbolone. It increases acid reflux. Another would be oral steroids, increases acid reflux. Another would be clenbuterol, major increases acid reflux. And then metformin as well, definitely increases acid reflux, more burning in the throat. So if somebody is taking something like, Trenbolone, oral steroids, clenbuterol, and metformin all at the same time, they can have major acid reflux problems where they're like having burning, serious, intense burning in their throat a lot and feeling like this is intolerable. So everybody knows that, the first thing that I recommend doing in these situations is basifying or alkalinizing the body, which, you eat baking soda. So you need to take a tablespoon of baking soda when you feel that acid, and you need to drink it, swish it around your mouth and drink it. And that will neutralize the acid in your stomach to start out. And then, from there, your stomach, the baking soda will then be digested into your system, which will then go around and alkalinize or de-acidify the rest of your body, which the body functions in a slightly alkalinized state, okay, not a acidic state. So when your body is acidic, it's not in a healthy state. It's not able to function, optimally. So you want to stay alkalinized. Baking soda, very healthy. Personally, I have it every day. I have one big spoonful of baking soda every day. It's something I really believe in. With metformin, the more you take, the stronger acid effect it has. There's something going on with type 2 diabetics and diabetics in general, where they, ketoacidosis, lactic acidosis, they're more susceptible to these things. And I'm really not an expert on diabetes. I know the basics, obviously, and I'm able to, tell you guys about, how diabetes and insulin works, insulin and bodybuilding, etc., metformin and diabetes. But I'm not an expert on diabetes. So I actually don't know why diabetic people are more sensitive to these acidic conditions than non-diabetic people. But anyways, for the average guy, if you're getting too much acid reflux, you're going to want to stop taking the stuff that you're taking. And for the average guy, you don't, get to a point where you're in some kind of a crisis with lactic acidosis or metabolic acidosis, where you're in danger, if you don't have diabetes from doing something like taking metformin. Possibly if you were really pushing it and you were eating a lot of acidic stuff, not taking your baking soda and just, letting the worst acid reflux be around, you could run into some problems, but it would be unusual. So for normal people, you're not really going to be running into a problem. And when you notice acid, okay, you got to either take stuff out or you got to take baking soda. It's one of those two options. That's basically how you deal with acid. And there's another thing. People don't want to subscribe to this thing about baking soda, because there's a lot of stuff you can sell about acid reflux, and baking soda is pennies. Okay, it's worthless. So there can be no money made on this. So you're gonna hear a lot of shit talking on baking soda. Okay, but baking soda is like a natural, universal remedy for so many stuff. You can take all this expensive stuff that doesn't work very good, makes its own problems and issues and stuff. Or you can just take baking soda, which is the best one that all the other stuff that costs money is based off of. All right, let's get to another question here. Ben T asks, hey Dan, question for you. Topic is cycle length. What is optimal cycle length? The debate seems to be short cycle, 6 weeks, rest 6 weeks, repeat. Long cycle, 6 months on, 2 months off, repeat. When do majority of gains occur? Supposedly majority of gains occur within 6 weeks. Androgen receptor downregulation after 6 weeks versus myostatin after 6 weeks. Does it even matter what mechanism is affecting us after 6 weeks? You demand operator. Yeah. So we'll just get to the last bit of that. So there's a lot of research showing that the more steroids you take and the longer you take them, the more androgen receptors are created. So I know there's this big thing on the internet, you know, where they say like, oh, your myostatin went up, your androgen receptors downregulated. But actually none of that's based in reality. It's actually the exact opposite of the truth. It's just wrong. And it's hard to believe, you know, because they're so adamant about that. And that's what you see everywhere. But according to the research, and this is pretty trustworthy research, you know, it's on receptors of the body and stuff, you know, it's not on medicine that pharmaceutical companies are going to try to sell. You know, higher dosages of steroids produce more androgen receptors, up to and above 10,000 milligrams of testosterone per week, which has been studied in humans, and hundreds of thousands of milligrams per week of steroids, oral steroids, testosterone, etc., have been studied in dogs. Not everybody has access to all this research, but I bought the book that the about steroid studies, you know, back in the 60s and 70s, you know, the companies that were researching all the different compounds. There's a bunch of steroids, you know, that never came to market. That Superdrol was one of them. That's why it's so good. That, you know, that was research, you know, talk about it in those books from back then, but then it never came out until, you know, 2000s. Yeah, so the other thing is that myostatin, so your brain, there's a difference between androgen receptors and like receptors for your brain, okay? I want to go over androgen receptors a little bit more. So androgen receptors are formed to accommodate the amount of androgen receptors, or of androgens in the body, okay? So the more milligrams of steroids you take, the more androgen receptors are formed, okay? And downregulation does not happen. It's a myth. It's not true. It's wrong. Okay, and then the other thing is that myostatin, steroids decrease myostatin. So there's this also other wrong myth, falsity, that, you know, when you go on a steroid cycle, your myostatin starts going up, and that makes you stop your gains, which is another thing, you know, like where people say, like, this reminds me of metformin, and they're like, your IGF-1 goes down, and then that stops your gains. And then it's like, yo, when has it even been conclusively shown? You know, since when was IGF-1 the king of muscle gains? Okay, no, this is just some freaking myth that people talk about on the internet or something. You don't even know if IGF-1 is important that much to your muscle gains, or what kind of IGF-1, okay? You know, the kind that is actually really, you know, the most important is the intramuscular formed, not liver formed, not systemic, but intramuscular, intracellular IGF-1 that is made inside the muscle cell. So there are a lot of ways to confuse people with bodybuilding. You can really run with this stuff. You can really run with your science, and you can really confuse the heck out of people. So the androgen receptors go up when you take steroids, but so here's the thing, and that people will notice, is that the brain does not respond the same way as the body does with receptor formation or downregulation, etc. So people will notice when they go on Trenbolone, they feel very stimulated, but then as the cycle goes on, they kind of feel more normal, and then after they stop the cycle, you know, they may feel actually a dip in energy, and then, you know, they kind of, you know, make sense logically. Oh, you know, my receptor's downregulated, and now they have to get sensitized, you know, to a normal amount of stimulation. And that's right. That's actually correct. But those are brain neurochemicals and brain neuroreceptors, okay? Those are not androgenic hormone receptors that were causing that were caused by the Trenbolone, okay? The Trenbolone caused different levels of neurotransmitters like noradrenaline, adrenaline, serotonin, dopamine to be in your brain. And those receptors for noradrenaline, adrenaline, serotonin, dopamine, okay, those type of receptors do downregulate in the brain. So you can, you know, from being on steroids, have brain receptor downregulation, but you will not have muscle receptor downregulation. It is a stone hard fact that the more steroids a person is on, and the bigger they are, and the more success they, you know. It's so, you know, you don't want to tell people to do bad things. and I'm going to say it's unhealthy. Bodybuilding's unhealthy. It's going to be as unhealthy as you make it, okay? And if you want to do stupid things like taking the most outrageous dosages of anabolics, when you can make gains on lower dosages, that's going to be dumb, okay? But, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that, people that are on thousands of milligrams of steroids don't have better odds of succeeding with their bodybuilding than people who are not, okay? That's just reality. Short cycle versus long cycle, 6 weeks is not enough for muscle to set in. It's just not enough. 6 months, etc., I would lean more towards that. But the only thing that really matters is over time, are your lifts going up? You can be, so say you're doing 275 on bench press for 3 sets of 10 reps. Over time, doing your 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, or 6 months on, 2 months off, which method is helping you increase that to 315 for 3 sets of 10, rather than 275 or whatever, it's this kind of stuff. Okay. And if you are you've got to focus on these kinds of, qualitative, ways of assessing your progress. Great question, operator. I enjoyed that. It really needed a lot of clarity. All right. And the final question for today, question for the podcast, from Anonymous, please. If one were to stay on 500 milligrams of test year-round and swap the secondary compound in and out, can that be sustainable? I'd really say that that's a pretty sustainable way to do bodybuilding. When you go on cruise, for example, you get smaller. So, I've thought about this too, what would be a sustainable way to do bodybuilding? And what I came up with is injectable 1, testosterone, and then injectable 2. And it's going to be a choice of either equipoise, nandrolone, primobolan, dihydroboldenone, also called 1-testosterone, or masteron, a second injectable like that is not trenbolone. And you're going to be pairing that at a similar dose to the testosterone. And then taking a low dose of growth hormone and metformin. That in my opinion, that's the most sustainable way to do bodybuilding, healthiest way to do bodybuilding, doing that long term. Yeah, of course you could come off and do little cruises or little off cycles sometimes or something, but you could also do things like, if you wanted to stay on, and because people do stay on, we're not going to pretend like all bodybuilders. There are a lot of bodybuilders who do not come off cycle. They don't. Okay. Yeah, this is a reality. We don't have to pretend like this doesn't happen. It does happen, and everyone knows it. Everyone who's experienced. Beginners probably don't, because the only thing they know is the internet. But this does happen, and if you're going to do that, doing something like injectable 1, testosterone, injectable 2, which is an injectable not trenbolone, growth hormone, metformin. That's in my opinion, the most healthy and sustainable way that you can do that. And also you'll feel good on a cycle like that.